Okay, thank you very much, Darylyn, and welcome everybody. And I have to say, level 3 for me is not different this morning, walking the dog, home office, but no one has yet told the dogs that they might soon be able to socialize with each other. So we're still playing that dancing game of going round and round dogs. So thank you though, and welcome. Do you know that ants can shape the behavior of each other through submitting chemicals? We humans, we do it by standing in front of each other or sitting, looking into each other's eyes, maybe waving our arms around, moving our body, and strange noises come out of our mouth. The human to human communication is really a true wonder of the world. And when you think about it, we've all been doing it nearly from day one. As soon as we're born, our parents start to communicate with us. And soon we're communicating without even thinking, unconsciously. But that communication really reaches its most intense when we have to get up, maybe on a stage in front of people, or now through virtual communication. And so what we'd like to do today in the short time that we've got available is give you some skills, some tips to help you with your speaking. And we can all do it. We all speak, we all do it every day. And the good news is you can actually learn new skills. You can learn these skills. So what we're going to do is look at, first of all, that fear that we have, whether it be online or whether it be in front of people. There's often anxiety that we have. And then, all right, what do we actually talk about? How do we get the content for the talk? How do we design the talk? And then how do we deliver it? And then we're going to talk about the use of visual aids. Just one point, there is no one way to give a talk. And the important thing is, if there was one way, we'd all be doing it, it'd all be boring, and that's it. What we like is newness and freshness. And it's important that you learn to talk with your voice. So everything we're doing today is giving you skills. As I said, you've already got the skills, you can talk, but extra skills to help enhance and develop the skills that you've got. But remember, you're going to find your own voice. So to start off with, I'd like to hand over to Tim, who's going to talk about the anxiety in speaking.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Gaye. Good to see you all today. I'm start of level 3. I'm here in sunny Nelson, so another beautiful sunny day outside, a great way to start level 3. So I've started today with a little poll for you, and some of you would have filled it out already. And the question on the poll is, in which situation do you feel most anxious speaking? In person, virtually, which we're getting used to now, and also the final option is I don't feel anxious speaking. And if you're in that case, that's a lucky position to be in. So if you haven't done it yet, I see a lot of people have. Just take a few seconds now and fill that in, and we'll get back to that in a few minutes' time. The answers are looking quite intriguing at the moment. So I'm going to take you back now to when I was a high school student, year 11, Nelson College, and it was the English speaking class. And for the speech, we had to talk about a famous person, and I was Lord Nelson. I got up to the front, and the eyes were all on me. My heart was pounding. I was feeling lightheaded. My palms were sweaty. And I stopped, and I just froze. I just couldn't get my words out at all. It was just too intimidating, these physical sensations. And I had to go and sit down and couldn't give the speech that day. So Gaye and I worked with quite a few people, and we've seen it's actually quite a common occurrence to freeze when speaking. And what's even more common is to try and rush through your ideas as quickly as possible so I can come and sit down. In that case, you're just trying to get out of the sensations and get back to a comfortable place as soon as possible. So these are normal. It's natural to feel nervous when speaking. However, we're going to break this down a little bit today because it's not quite as bad as it's often perceived for some people. And there are some strategies which can help with us. So let's look at some of these sensations. I'll bring them up on screen now. So have a look through these two categories. Some of you may have some of them, some may not. Have a think, what do you think the title is for each particular category? And if we're doing our live courses, what I do right now is I'd obviously ask someone to shout out. Heather will move on. Invisible and visible. Do you notice that the biggest part of it are invisible sensations? You can feel the racing heartbeat. You can feel lightheaded. However, the audience often cannot tell. It's something that seems a lot worse to you than it actually appears. And if we move to the other side and look at visible sensations, they're often not as bad as you think. So we'll start with a shaky voice. Often people give presentations and they say, gosh, and I've done the same thing, my voice was so shaky, it must have sounded awful. However, nobody actually managed to notice this. It's often much worse for us fixating on it than for the people looking. And it's similar with blushing. Trembling's a little bit more visible, but still it's often, unless it's extreme trembling, it's often not as bad as it might seem. So there are some strategies though still which can help us come through these sensations and feel more positive about giving talks. So the first one is having the concept, the audience is your friend. So it's very easy to give a talk and to think, goodness me, all these eyes, they're judging me, and it becoming a negative experience, a disconnect with your audience. And if that's the case, it's going to be a miserable experience. However, mostly the audience are there because they want to hear, they want to hear what you've got to say, and actually, they're supporting you. They want people to do well in almost all cases. So that's a much more positive way to kind of reframe the thinking about talking. A second point, in terms of reframing the thinking, is to keep your focus very much on your message rather than on the nervous sensations you might be feeling. So, for example, are you teaching someone something? Are you trying to entertain? Are you trying to persuade or motivate your staff? Try and focus very much on that point you're trying to get across, and that will kind of let these other sensations dissipate away a little bit. And the third point, and this is the one I find the most helpful personally, is visualization. So if you've got a big talk coming up, just try and take a few minutes, even 5-10 minutes for a few days before. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and imagine the start of your presentation and see it going well. See, you feel good to be there. People are focused, they're engaged, and see it as a more positive experience. Now, you don't have to go through the whole talk and visualize it because that will be quite time consuming, but you can then go to the end of the talk. And again, so you've finished, you're feeling good, you've got your message across, and see it being successful. And just a few minutes, 3 or 4 times before a presentation will kind of change a lot of the more fear-based thinking around them. So we'll finish up this section briefly, and we're going to come back to the poll now. So we'll come back to this whole idea of virtual versus non-virtual presentations. So there was some studies done about 3 years ago, which Gaye and I found, and it looked at university students, and it looked at them when they were before giving a presentation and after, and they had to give the same presentation virtually and in person. So the natural thing to think of is it'll be more anxious experience giving it in person. However, the study actually, firstly they did the first survey, 60% of people said they thought it was going to be more anxious in person. So they did their 2 talks, and they interviewed them again at the end. And interestingly, 2/3 said it was actually more of an anxious experience giving it virtually. So what could the reasons for this be? The first one, if you're giving a talk in person, you've got the audience in front of you. You might be nervous at the start, but a rapport will develop quite quickly. And then you often tend to settle in most cases. But virtually, you don't have that rapport. You're looking at a camera or a screen. So it's much easier for your mind to start to catastrophize what people could be thinking. And that can kind of keep people a little bit more tense when giving a presentation virtually. So again, for that one, going back to that concept of the audience is your friend, thinking of a positive, of people enjoying it, the talk behind the camera, and also even talking to somebody that you know behind there can kind of reduce that stress and help with virtual presentations. So the final part of this will be to look at the poll for this group, which I'm quite interested to see. And it's actually quite an interesting result. It's almost split down the middle. In which situation do you feel more anxious speaking? 39% in person, 32% are the lucky ones who don't feel anxious, and 30% virtually. So that's quite interesting to see how that turned out, a real mix. So I'm going to pass you back to Gaye now, and she's going to give an overview of the design and delivery of a talk. So Gaye.
Just realised I was muted. So thank you, Tim. You've got some strategies now, and you know, some people don't feel as nervous, but I'm sure all of us do have some of that adrenaline, because that actually makes us perform. We need that to actually get up there and do it. But let's imagine now we've sorted our nerves a little bit, and now we're going to say, all right, what is it I'm going to do? So we'll talk about the content, the design, and the delivery of a talk. So the content, what do I actually put in my speech? Well, work from the back. What do I want my audience to take away? And normally you want to perhaps give them information. You want to inspire them. You want to persuade them to do something. And sometimes you might be wanting to entertain them. But then if you think about what is the message I want them to take away, that helps you with thinking, well, what is the content? If I have to give information, make sure I've got that information. If it's a business one and I want facts and figures, make sure you've got everything you need. If you are telling a story, which is a good way of giving examples of things, get your stories, your story, someone else's story, or sometimes you can make up a story. We love stories. Stories in talks are wonderful. So you get the content, and then you think, okay, I've got all that, I've got my information together. Then what do I do with it? Do I just stand up and read it out? Or no, you've got to think, how do I put that together? How do I make it something that people are going to listen to? So I'd like to ask you to think about your favorite sandwich and think about what makes it your favorite sandwich. Often that's quite hard, isn't it? We're not quite sure, well, I really like that ciabatta bread or that sourdough bread that Darylyn has had delivered today, or I really like that chicken in the middle, or I really like the mayo that I put on. Well, I've made a sandwich that is a very popular sandwich, the BLT. Here's the BLT sandwich. What I'd like you to do is think about putting together, designing your speech like designing your sandwich. So at the top, you've got some bread or a bun or your nice sourdough bread, but that is the part that gets us to want to, first of all, eat it. If we had a moldy old piece of bread, no one's going to be jumping up and down and wanting to eat this. So it's very important what you open your speech, your talk with, is something that gets the audience's attention. So it says, oh, what's this about? I want to listen to this. You can do that by asking a question. You could do a rhetorical question. You could use a quote. You could use a statement. When I said about ants, you're most probably thinking, what's this going to be? That links into your talk, but just gets the audience to think what this is about. Don't go so wild that everybody's confused, but something that says, hey, this is good. You're going to want to keep eating through this. And then in the middle, we have our content. And depending on the amount of time that you've got, we would say 3, maybe 4 points for your content. So what happens if you don't have enough content? How do you think people feel when they've got a sandwich that doesn't have very much content, they're not really going to be that keen, are they, on a sandwich that really doesn't have much content? It's just going to be leaving people thinking, well, I'm still hungry, I wanted more. The reverse, what happens if we have too much content? We have too much in it, and it's good, but it's all filling all over the place, and we don't know how to get our mouths around it, and it's really confusing. So think about how you're going to put the points together. Not too much, not too little. And a rule of thumb, we speak about 120 words a minute if you're going to write your speech out, and that's roughly, you can work out your time and how to do that. Remember, you're not reading your speech, so it will actually take a little bit longer because you'll use pause and you'll use different words, but that's a good feel. And also with your content, make sure that when you move, let's say you've got 3 points, that you take your audience with you. So you may have a thread that runs through that you can lead them through, or you might say, so the first point is, the second, the third. When you read a book, you know you've gone to another chapter because it tells you you've finished one chapter and it says chapter 2. You know. Make sure your audience knows that you've finished one topic, one point, and you're moving on to the next one. So when you've got your opening, you've got all your nice content, and that's in the content in the middle part when you can use your storytelling. We do love stories. Then at the end, the bottom. Normally the bottom of the sandwich is similar to the top. Possibly if you wanted to be creative, you could have it different, but we normally have the same, and that's what holds it all together. And when we get to the bottom, we know that we've finished our sandwich. And the same with our speech. When we've got to the end, we need to make sure that your audience knows you've finished. There's nothing worse than a person and they walk off and people think, oh, well, where did that go? Let them know. Tie in your end of your talk to the beginning of your talk. So possibly if you used a quote, refer back to the quote or use another quote that relates. Do something, possibly go through. So the 3 points that I've covered today are 1, 2, 3, or this is how we've worked through, so that they absolutely know that you've finished. Remember what I said about thinking, what is it you want the person to take away? You want the person to take away something. So make sure you're finished. If you want to inspire them, you've got something that inspires them. If you want to, you've given them information, you can show them, recap on the information that you've given. You might have handouts as well. If you want to persuade them, make sure that you are fulfilling what you wanted to get out of the speech. So we've sorted out our anxiety. We've made our beautiful sandwich. So how do we give it to you, Darylyn? Do we just plonk it down in front of you? Well, it could be the best sandwich in the world, but Darylyn isn't going to be that enthused when she's looking at that just dumped down on her desk. So what I could do when I presented my sandwich to Darylyn, I could put a serviette with it. I could put a knife with it. I could, if I had any in my garden at the moment, I could put some parsley. I could put it on a nice plate and I could present it nicely. And that's what you have to do with your speech. Think about how you present it. You've got the words, and the words are really, really important. But your facial expressions, your body language, and your voice can enhance what it is that you're saying. Because all the time, when you're talking, you're trying to build a picture up in a person's mind. So if you're using your face, if you're talking about a time being a happy experience, share it with your face. It was really, really a great time that I had. Oh, until I realized that it was the end and I was going to have to go home, or something like that. So your expression shows. Your body language, when we are presenting on a stage, we're obviously standing up and you can see the whole body, but you can still virtually use your body. You can use your hands to explain something on this hand, on the other, or explain it was very tiny, or it was very big, it was very tall, very small. All you're trying to do is, when you're using the words, build a picture, help the person to understand what it is that you're saying. And the final thing is your voice. Now, your voice when you're speaking is really your toolbox. And in your toolbox, you've got a number of tools. And you won't use every tool in every speech, but you'll use it again when you're wanting to emphasize something. So one of your tools is power, the power of your voice. You don't have to yell at your audience, but if you are talking about something that is very strong, say, this is a very, very strong point I want to get across. This isn't quite so important now. You can use your voice, use the power in your voice to project forward, and then bring it back when you want to emphasize that something is a little bit calm, a little bit quieter. The next thing that we have in our toolbox is the pitch of your voice. So sometimes you need to raise your voice. I was so excited. Oh, and then I realized that I hadn't won Lotto. So you can use your voice. The pitch again can emphasize what it is that you're saying. One of the things with pitch, and tends to be a New Zealand habit, and unfortunately more female than male, is we raise our voice at the end of a sentence to make sure that people have heard what we've said. So if you know you do that, or you're conscious, just try to not have that ooh, ooh, ooh with each sentence, because you will end up with your audience doing a little bit of this at times. The next thing we have is pace, the pace of your voice. Now, Tim used pace very effectively when he was talking about wanting to get off as quickly as you can when you've been speaking. So you can use your pace if you want to speed up your voice. If you're talking about something was really gathering the momentum, and then when we'd finished, it slowed down. So use the pace to emphasize as well. The next is the pause, and the pause should be your favorite tool in your voice toolbox. We use a pause to add emphasis to what we're saying. It gives you the opportunity to make sure that the audience are following what you're saying and they just come back in with you. It's very effective when you really want to get a point over. So my third point is, and then deliver your third point. Just a slight pause gets the audience, what is it going to be? The pause is also very useful when you're speaking and you have one of those oh moments when you just can't remember what it was that you were going to say. The audience doesn't know. Never say, oh, sorry, I've forgotten what I was going to say. I'm going to get my notes. Just pause. They're not going to be going, God, what's this all about? They're actually just going to be waiting for what it is that you say. And so a pause is really effective if you have lost your way a little bit. And also it's effective if you feel that you use filler words a lot, the ums, the ahs, the so's, the what ifs, the maybes. We often use filler words because we don't know what to say. And if you listen often to politicians, you'll hear that they use filler words quite often. But filler words, if you think you're going to be doing a just take a pause. It'll only be for a second, but make sure you use the pause effectively. And finally, unfortunately, it isn't another P, it's quality. The quality of your voice. I said at the beginning that you need to find your voice and to talk with your voice. The quality of your voice is really important. And by what I mean by quality, your authenticity, talking, it's you. Be you. Don't try and be somebody else. Be yourself, because that's what the audience want. And the audience can see through things if you are trying to be somebody else. Be yourself. Make sure that what you're speaking about is something that you're passionate about, you're knowledgeable about, you've prepared, but the quality, make sure that it's actually you, and be authentic. So just to recap, we've talked about the content of a speech, getting everything that you need for it, and that's good preparation. The design of the speech, my BLT sandwich that my husband has just made that he's most probably waiting to eat, and then the delivery, how I present my sandwich. Make sure I help my audience to understand what it is that I'm saying, to be able to build up a picture. And finally, what we'd just like to talk a little bit about is, we've used some visual aids here, and the sandwich was visual aids, but what about visual aids? They're aids. And so Tim's just going to talk us through a few main points when we're giving a presentation, a talk, and using visual aids.
Thanks, Gaye. So we saw a couple of uses of visual aids with Gaye. She had the sandwich, a prop, which helped her illustrate the structure of a talk. And we also saw, her with the background that she put on, using a flip chart with multiple comments to go through her structure. So she kind of used the back of her wall as a flip chart. So I'm just going to think about what I remember from a university lecturer. And this was a university history lecturer, and she was extremely passionate about her topic, which was American history. And I talked to her before the lecturers. She was very knowledgeable, and it was clear this was her thing. However, I went to her lectures, and unfortunately, she was just reading screes and screes and screes of PowerPoint slides. 6 or 7 bullet points per slide, full sentences, and she was just reading off them. And I'm sure everybody has seen that kind of presentation. And the unfortunate thing with it is it creates disengagement. It reduces the ability of the person to get their passion of their ideas across, and it turns the audience off, as we know. So that's not what we want to do, and I'm sure nobody here does that. So when we're thinking about visual aids, the key word is aid. So one way of doing it could be preparing some slides first and then getting into a presentation and giving it. But that's not going to be an effective way. You have to start instead, what's like Gaye talked about, what's the purpose of my talk? What am I trying to get across? And then how can I use visuals to support this? So it's the content first and the visual aids second to support it. That's the key message. There's a variety of uses for a visual aid, and I'm going to do this through a PowerPoint. The first way you might use it is to show an idea. A picture tells 1,000 words, and a lot of ideas are much easier to get across with a picture. So I'll share you an example that Gaye has used. And this is an example of a retina in an eye. So it'd be very difficult to explain what a retina looks like if you are up there, but with a visual aid, we can very simply show the retina, and you don't have to talk in detail. The second point is to explain a difficult concept. So with this eye work that Gaye does, she does work on macular degeneration. So have a quick read of that slide. So through that slide, it's got high explanatory power. It gets the idea across what macular degeneration is. Otherwise it'd be a lot more complex, but it's creating very good explanatory power, reducing the amount of words you need to share the idea. And the third way you can use slides effectively is just to increase the visual impact of your presentation. And with slides and visual aids, 2 good rules of thumb. One is keep 1 idea per slide. So if you've got 4 ideas you want to present quite quickly, it's quite common to put them all on the same slide. The problem is you'll be talking about 1 idea and the audience is attention will be on another idea that's on the slide. So keep it one idea per slide. And also, when you get the slide on, you need to talk immediately about it, because that's where the eyes are going. When you're finished with that slide, get it off. So you only want your slides or any visual aid on at the relevant point of time. However, if you follow those ground rules, visual aids can be a great way to aid and support your presentation. So now we'll go back to Gaye, and she is going to wrap this up with a few concluding remarks.
Thank you, Tim. So hopefully, if we go back to what we said we were going to do at the beginning, we were going to give you some techniques, talk a little bit about the anxiety that you may feel when you're presenting. Then we've talked about how we put a speech together, the content, the design, and the delivery, and then how you use visual aids. We, as Darylyn said, we run a company called Speak Confidently, and we were most probably 5 weeks in the same position as quite a lot of you may have been. Our business was only 6 months old, and we were actually feeling a bit chuffed with ourselves because we had programs that we were running, and all of a sudden we had to stop that, and we had to redefine how we were going to do things and how we were going to run our programs online, which we are doing now. So if anybody is interested in looking at what we're doing, do go and look at our website, which is www.speakconfidently.co.nz, and have a look at what we've got, or give us a ring if you'd like to talk specifically about anything that you would like some assistance with. Thank you for this. I think, have we got a little bit of time before questions?
Yep.
We could talk. So one of the things I also wanted just to talk about is when you're running meetings with Zoom and at work, and as Darylyn said, and most people now are in that environment, and I know some people are loving it, loving not to have to drive into work. Other people are finding that they are missing that real face-to-face contact with people. So if you are running meetings, and if you are running the meeting, just be aware that people within the group will have different points of view, and you need to make sure, if you can, you're involving people in your meetings. If you run a weekly team meeting and you're doing that online, well, run it as you used to. But if you've got the opportunity to perhaps get somebody else more involved, even sharing the chairing of a meeting is a good thing to do. Watch for people's body language. I mean, if you've got a meeting where you can see everybody on the screen, just check out, just look at how engaged the person is or not. You're not there as a counsellor, but there's some really, really good advice on the Mental Health Foundation website and WorkSafe about questions to ask if you are concerned about a person's health and how they're dealing with things. Because for some of us, such as myself, there's only my husband and myself in a house. We've got the space. It's not actually, and we both work from home anyway. But for other people, they've got the family around them, they're trying to work off the kitchen table, it's stressful. So just think about that when you are thinking about the meetings. Some people have said to me, it's becoming a bit boring now, each week we're doing various things. Look, if you've got that sort of culture and environment, try and theme it up. I heard of one organisation that have had a hat day, people made hats. Darylyn said she bought a shoe in to say, this is a shoe that I'm normally working. But if you're starting a meeting, possibly to say, how is everybody? What's going to happen? People are going to say, fine. Maybe instead of that, reframe it. What's working well for people? Where have people got some challenges? Because you'll also find that people will share ideas and what they find that works. So there's been a lot at the beginning of sorting out the technology and all those sorts of things. But now, for a lot of organizations, the reality is, actually, we don't keep need to traveling and have people from overseas, but think about those meetings that you are having with your team regularly and just be checking in on people. And then it may be that if you are concerned about a person, have a one-on-one session, but don't just ask them how they're feeling. Just ask them what is working, where they might have some issues as well. And as we've had the message all the time, I think we need to still keep being kind to each other. It's difficult situation. Nobody chose to be in it. So let's help each other to make it work the best as we can.